So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a short span of time within 30 minutes. The idea is very simple. We want you to cover your current affairs on a daily basis, but we don't want you to spend your entire day just reading the newspaper. Therefore, we shall cover the entire day's current affairs within 30 minutes. Now, just watching this lecture in 30 minutes would be job half done, because just after watching it, you need to revise it as well. Why, you ask? Well, revision helps in consolidating these current affairs in your memory. Otherwise, you'll quickly forget them. Now, you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes are shared on our Telegram platform. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Okay then, let's begin today's discussion. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. So here's the list. And number one in this list is India's hero, India's integrated air command and control system that protected our skies from Pakistani intrusions. Okay, Pakistani attack. So what is this integrated air command and control system and what is the science behind it? We'll understand that today. Then recently, President Donald Trump visited, Saudi Arabia, and he got a rock star reception there. Now, Saudi Arabia is pushing for a civil nuclear cooperation with USA. Now, this has a lot of ramifications for the region, but we'll try to understand what are the reasons behind this push for civil nuclear cooperation between USA and Saudi. Okay. Then, we'll talk about the controversy surrounding PM-SHRI scheme. Okay, because Kerala government has recently filed a case in Supreme Court basically saying that the government is not releasing funds under various centrally sponsored schemes related to education, and PM-SHRI scheme is the culprit. Okay, so what is this PM-SHRI scheme? We'll talk about this. And in the end, we'll talk about National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration from USA. Okay, it has received a lot of budget cuts, okay, because of which they are going to disband their weather balloon launches which are used to basically measure atmosphere, okay, upper air circulation. So what are weather balloon launches? What is their significance? What is their history? And does India also launch these weather balloons? We'll talk about this. Okay, so let's start today's discussion, starting with topic number one, which is integrated air command and control system. So the Indian Air Force and the Ministry of Defense basically released this image. These are the people who were behind controlling India's sky from enemy intrusion. So at the media briefing on Operation Sindoor, military officer displayed a picture of integrated air command and control node. Okay, now this integrated air command and control system is operated by Indian Air Force. Okay, this is basically India's air defense system, which is a complex system of radars, control centers, defensive fighter jets, ground-based air defense system, missile system, okay, to intercept the missiles or aircraft, and electronic warfare system. Clear? Now, about this IACCS. So it is basically an automated command and control system that integrates data from all air defense assets. Okay. So basically all the equipments used to protect our skies, whether it's detection infrastructure like radar and other things, then electronic warfare, whether it includes missile systems that intercept these incoming aerial threats, all of this is connected and works uniformly. Okay, this is IACCS. The availability of consolidated data set along with real-time updates on a screen helps military commanders with situational awareness during air operations. So under this system, what happens is that all the aerial threats are displayed on the screen and which missile intercepted what. Everything is centrally controlled and can be seen by military commanders in real time. This really helps military commanders take decisions. By reducing reaction time, it allows commanders to make early decisions on identification and assessment of threats. So this has been the biggest hero in India's defense against Pakistani attack. Okay. Now, this system was this entire electronic system was created by an Indian PSU called Bharat Electronics Limited, BEL. Okay. Now, BEL developed a similar system for Indian Army. This is for Indian Air Force. A similar system has been developed for Indian Army, and that is called the Akash Tir system. The Indian Army has a similar air defense control and reporting system called Akash Tir, which connects the units of Indian Army's air defense. Both Akash Tir and IACCS have been developed by Bell. Akash Tir would enable the monitoring of low-level airspace. Okay, so basically IACCS monitors everything. Okay, from low-level airspace to high-altitude airspace. Akash Tir is basically for the protection of low-level airspace on battle areas. Now, currently, Akash Tir functions differently than IACCS, but efforts are being made to integrate Akash Tir system along with IACCS so that better protection can be searched for. Okay. Now, in the press briefing by the three commanders, okay, the three DGMOs, Director General of Military Operations, Director General of Air Operations, Director General of Naval Operations, okay, in that press briefing, well, the commanders actually showcased India's multi-layer air defense system. It consists of 4 layers. Okay, the first layer consists of counter drone systems. Okay, and it has man pads, man portable air defense systems. So you can basically mount these man pad missiles on a Indian Army's or anyone's shoulder. Okay, and they can fire missiles on the drones. Then second and third layers basically counter threats which are a little higher, okay, higher than visual range. Then fourth layer of the grid comprises long range surface to air missiles which can intercept far away objects, aerial threats. Okay, so this is a 4-layer system and this has been really helpful. Okay, now as far as the detection of fighter jets, missiles, drones coming into Indian territory is concerned, we have a detection system. It consists of range of surveillance radar, ground-based radars, and airborne radars, which are mounted on aircraft. For example, AWACS, Airborne Warning and Control System, Airborne Early Warning and Control System, which are mounted on aircrafts which monitor the skies and fly in the skies. Okay, they are networked into this Air Force air defense system. These radars play a key role in detection, identification, interception, and destruction of hostile intruders. Okay, so this has been India's hero in this recent skirmish or conflict, or some people say full-fledged air war with Pakistan. Okay, all right then. Now let's quickly shift our focus to second news item of the day, and that is US-Saudi civil nuclear cooperation. So Saudi Arabia and USA are discussing a deal to cooperate on kingdom's ambitions to develop a civil nuclear industry. Okay. Now look, nuclear word, whenever we hear nuclear word, we think about nuclear bombs. But nuclear is also used to produce electricity, nuclear energy. When we talk about using nuclear energy to only produce electricity, we use the word civil. Civil nuclear industry or nuclear energy for civilian purposes. Okay. If you use nuclear energy for basically making nuclear bombs, then that is nuclear industry for defense purposes. Okay, so Saudi Arabia basically wants to cooperate with USA to make nuclear power plants to produce nuclear electricity. USA won't be cooperating with Saudi Arabia to give them nuclear bombs. First of all, you need to understand that. Okay, Saudi Arabia wants cooperation with USA so that USA transfers the technology for producing nuclear electricity. Clear? Now, many people were taken by surprise that Saudi Arabia is demanding that, because Saudi Arabia is the world's largest oil exporter, and Saudi Arabia produces most of its electricity using fossil fuels. Okay, natural gas or crude oil that it produces. So why does Saudi Arabia want, or why is Saudi Arabia desiring to produce electricity using nuclear means? Because Saudi Arabia has enough oil reserves to use it for producing electricity. The thing is that Saudi Arabia basically desires to reduce its carbon emissions. Saudi Arabia wants to reduce its carbon emissions, and therefore it wants to produce electricity using clean fuel. Okay, and nuclear energy does not produce any greenhouse gas emissions. So one reason is that. The second reason is that currently a significant amount of crude oil in Saudi Arabia is used to produce electricity. Okay. Now, if they are producing electricity using nuclear, then this crude oil would be freed up for export. And through these exports, Saudi Arabia will earn more revenue, right? So this is the reason why they are doing it. Clear? So what are the gains for Saudi Arabia through this cooperation? So first of all, Saudi Arabia will be able to diversify from oil. Currently, 68% of Saudi electricity is generated by natural gas and 32% by burning oil. So atomic power could replace some of that. Then that would help reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, because burning natural gas and oil emits a lot of carbon or greenhouse gases. Saudi requires a lot of electricity for water desalination. As you all know, that Saudi Arabia does not have many freshwater resources. Therefore, Saudi Arabia extracts seawater for drinking purposes. Now, this seawater contains a lot of salt, right? So Saudi Arabia has to put this seawater through desalination plants, which purifies, extracts all these salts and make this water basically it is available for drinking purposes. Okay. Now this water desalination requires a lot of electricity. Plus, Saudi Arabia is a hot country. Therefore, many people stay indoors and they require a lot of air conditioning, right? And for many other reasons. So Saudi Arabia requires electricity, and much of that electricity would now come from nuclear, so that it reduces its greenhouse gases also. Plus, most of these fossil fuels, crude oil, would now be freed up for exports, and this would increase Saudi Arabia's export revenue. Plus, Saudi Arabia, many people think that Saudi Arabia might also be thinking of getting hands on the uranium used for producing electricity. Then Saudi Arabia might enrich it and create a nuclear bomb for itself. And Saudi Arabia wants to create nuclear bomb for itself because Saudi Arabia's biggest rival is Iran. Okay, and Iran is basically, everyone knows this, that Iran is going through various procedures to acquire a nuclear weapon. Okay, so Saudi Arabia wants to create a deterrence. That is why Saudi Arabia is desiring a nuclear weapon as well. Though Saudi Arabia says that we need this electricity for civilian purposes. Okay. Now, if USA is going to help Saudi Arabia to get this nuclear energy for civilian purposes, well, there are a few issues. The biggest issue is that USA has to ensure that Saudi Arabia does not use this technology to create a uranium bomb or nuclear bomb. Okay, so what are the key issues? Well, for nuclear bomb, you need to enrich uranium. Now, the question is whether USA will build up these uranium enrichment facilities in Saudi territory, okay, and whether Saudi personnel will be allowed to access it. Because if Saudi people are allowed to access it, then Saudi people can enrich it further and basically create a nuclear bomb. So if you're providing uranium to Saudi Arabia, so Saudi Arabia has its own uranium reserves. They do not have any enrichment facility. So if USA is giving them enrichment facility, USA has to ensure that Saudi Arabia does not get the technology. Otherwise, they will weaponize it. So this is issue number one. Okay. And this issue number one is because so as to prevent weaponization. Okay. Now, USA has a law. It is called USA Atomic Energy Act of 1954. Under this law, USA can help other countries to acquire nuclear power for civilian purposes only. Okay, for civilian purposes. So under this law, USA can help countries acquire civilian nuclear power. But section 123 of this law says that the country has to showcase that it has no desire of building a nuclear bomb. Only then USA will help them have this technology. Okay, so the country has to basically fulfill 9 criteria points to show that it has no desire for a nuclear bomb. Then USA will help it under this law. So whether USA will be able to extract these 9 criteria or fulfillment of these 9 criteria from Saudi Arabia, that is to be seen. Okay, that is the question. Clear? Now let's shift our focus to another news item, which is PM-SHRI Scheme. So Kerala government has decided to approach the Supreme Court against Center's decision to withhold the release of 1500 crore to the state under various centrally sponsored education schemes. Okay. Kerala has alleged that the funds have been withheld as Kerala has stayed away from adopting the centre's flagship PM-SHRI scheme. Okay. Now, to understand this controversy, you need to know what PM-SHRI scheme is. Clear? Now, about PM-SHRI scheme. So, the full form of PM-SHRI is PM Schools for Rising India. It is a centrally sponsored scheme that aims to upgrade more than 14,500 existing schools across the country. Okay? Government schools, basically. Now, what do we mean by centrally sponsored scheme? A centrally sponsored scheme is that scheme in which expenditure by the government is shared between center and states. Okay, central government will incur 60% of the expenditure, state governments would have to share 40% of the expenditure. This is for normal states. For northeastern states and special category states, the ratio is 90% to 10%. So for Kerala, it was 60% to 40%. So under this scheme, schools would be upgraded. The objective is to transform these schools into model institutions that embody national education policy. So far, 12,400 schools in 670 districts across the country have become a part of this scheme. Now, what Kerala government is alleging is, look, central government will give money to states. This 60% of money would be given to states so that states can implement those schemes. But central government has basically some conditions, okay, with respect to these PM-SHRI scheme, that all schools should have the logo of PM-SHRI scheme. Then state governments have to fulfill certain conditions. Only then center will release these funds. Now, many South Indian states, okay, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, have refused to comply with those conditions. Okay, there are various political reasons for that, but they have refused to comply with those conditions. And therefore, central government has said that we won't release this money. That is why Kerala government is going to Supreme Court. Okay, that is the political controversy part, which you don't have to remember. You have to remember what this PM-SHRI scheme is all about. Okay, some more information on PM-SHRI scheme. So the duration of the scheme is from this period to this period, after which it shall be the responsibility of states to continue to maintain the benchmarks. Which schools are eligible? Schools managed by center, state, UT and local bodies like panchayats and municipalities, all Kendriya Vidyalayas and Navodaya Vidyalayas. Now, to receive funding under this scheme, states must confirm their participation by signing an MOU with the Education Ministry. So far, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal have not signed those MOU because of various political reasons. Okay, these are opposition ruled states. Okay, so that is what PM-SHRI scheme is. And now let's move on to our last news item, which is, well, NOAA's weather balloon launches. Now, NOAA is National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is under US Department of Commerce. Okay, now as you all know, that Trump government was basically slashing budgets of various government organizations. Okay, now they slashed the budget of NOAA also. And because of that, well, NOAA has decided to disband launching weather balloons for weather monitoring. Currently, weather is monitored by various agencies across the world through satellites and through weather balloons as well, which go to the upper air, upper atmosphere, to measure the upper atmospheric circulation. Okay, weather agencies across the world use weather balloons to make upper air observations. Now, what do we mean by upper air? It refers to the Earth's atmosphere above 5,000 feet. So anything above 5,000 feet is upper air atmosphere. And it is from here that the planet gets its rain and drought, wind and calm. Clear? Clouds form over here at this region, okay, at this height, okay. Rain, drought, everything gets regulated through this. That is why measurement of upper air is very important, and that is done through weather balloons. Clear? Now, as far as the history of weather balloon goes, okay, so let's talk about the history. Now, the tradition of making upper air observations goes back to 18th century. But back then, in 1700s, well, there were no upper air balloons. So the scientists used kites, big kites, okay, and these kites had monographs. These monographs, well, the scientists used to fly these kites at upper heights, And these manographs used to measure moisture, okay, temperature, pressure, everything. But there was a limit to which there was a limit to the height to which these kites could go. So French meteorologist Leon Terensic Debord, it's very difficult to pronounce French name though. He was the first one to use weather balloons in around 1896, and he found that weather balloons can go to significant heights, up to 35,000 feet, and monitor upper air. From then onwards, all weather monitoring agencies across the world started using upper air balloons. Okay. So this allowed meteorologists to reach even higher and discover tropopause. Okay. Because of these upper air balloons, they were able to discover tropopause. As you know, your atmosphere is divided into layers. The lowermost layer is troposphere, and a layer above it, where ozone layer is known as stratosphere. The boundary between troposphere and stratosphere is known as tropopause. So these weather balloons used by this French meteorologist was able to discover tropopause and stratosphere layer also through instruments called meteorographs. But later it was found in 1900s that these meteorographs also have some problems. They had various issues. They used to get destroyed when above a certain height. So there was a limit until a new instrument was discovered, which are known as radio sondes. Okay, these radio sondes are suspended from these balloons, and these radio sondes are better instruments to measure upper air. Okay, data recorded on meteorographs had some problems. These issues were tackled by radio sondes, radio meteorographs. Over the years, radio sondes have gone through several improvements, like they are much lighter, longer battery life, use GPS. Okay, typically, almost all space agencies use weather balloons. India also has a network of 56 radio sonde stations suspended through upper these weather balloons. Okay, and the thing is that the reason why in the 21st century we still use weather balloons is that no doubt with the launch of satellites we are better able to monitor uh, atmosphere. Okay, but satellites also have limitations. Satellites do help in monitoring atmosphere, but satellites cannot give you minute observation of upper air. And that is why, despite having satellites, countries still use weather balloons like India. India has a good network of satellites, but India still suspends these weather balloons to have a better observation of upper air. Okay, that was in the news. And with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But, like I say this every time, it would add more value if you do not forget to revise this lecture. Okay, so do not forget that. And on that note, I'll be signing off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.